and really excited to kind of dive in deep with the message today. So Jody has asked me to kind of break down the principles that I teach when talking to parents and when talking to young entrepreneurs for the first time, or developing or further developing a child brand or a kid brand, like I like to call it. We work with kids anywhere from the ages of 8 to 19, 20 years old. So I don't want you to think this is just for itty bitties, but I do want to tell you who this is for. So it's not a specific kid, right? If you have the smart kid, the athlete, the dancer, the model, the actor, the autistic kid, the creative kid, the artistic kid, the avid reader, it really doesn't matter. One of my favorite stories when someone tells me, you know, I don't have, my kid's not interested in anything. It doesn't matter. They don't have to be interested in anything. They're just a kid. And by way of being able to play and create from this genius and pure space that unfortunately we've all forgotten what that's like, just by way of them being a child and being creatively playful, that makes them the perfect person to build something innovative and quite genius. So for an example, about 10 years ago, I think it was around 2010, there was a little boy who was playing on the rug, and his mother was just an earshot of him and his little brother playing. They were erecting a big castle out of Legos. We've all been there, right? And he just said to himself, you know, wouldn't it be great if we had stickers to put on our Legos and turn them into stone walls, or, you know, picket fences, or have two guards at the moat there? And mom was listening. Now that's the magic for raising an entrepreneurial kid, is really listening to what your child cares about and is observant with. So in this particular case, mom says, you know, that's actually a pretty good idea. And mom talked to dad, and dad was actually is an attorney. And you can actually hear about this story online as well. It's still active today. And lo and behold, they called the family together, extended family as well, who had multiple skills. And they created BrickStix. And that's BRIXSTIX, I believe. And BrickStix was born. So these are vinyl type labels, like the little stickers that go on your sunglasses when you buy them, that they're removable. And they go on Lego blocks. So you can turn your Lego blocks into all kinds of scenery. So that business is still in operation today, 10 years later. But that kid, I think, was probably about 5 at the time. Of course, now he's about 15. So of course, he's not still playing with Legos, right? You know, if you're raising a teenager, Legos are a thing of the far past. But one thing to note here is those parents grabbed on to a little tiny spark of genius that your child says and does every single day, all day, quite naturally. The difference here is that they held on to that spark, realized that it was innovative, it came from a place of genius and necessity, right? And they began to market it, and they realized that that had value in the marketplace then and still does today. So even when the child lost interest from Legos, or grew up or grew out of it, they kept the machine going. They kept the brand that he developed by sheer ingenuity going. And they put it into a market, right, our consumer market, and kept it growing and growing even as the child grew up and grew out of it. He was on the Martha Stewart Living Show and multiple other shows and media outlets, and still is today, talking about the genius idea he had when he was 5. And you'll see that, and I've learned that throughout many of the interviews that I've had with multiple young entrepreneurs that began at, say, 7, 8 years old and are now graduating high school. It's not that they held on to that idea or that business, so to speak, for 10, 12 years. It's that the parents saw the value, saw the marketability of the thing, not necessarily the child, and decided that they were going to create a space in the market that would give back to their child in the form of revenue, community, fan base, name recognition, brand recognition, right? And would set up their child for a path of creating these types of ideas or being able to see how a doodle on a napkin or playing on the carpet actually can become a thing and end up in stores that they love frequenting, right? Or online and Amazon. And I think even with my own daughter, who has a business of her own, she is 9, she'll be 10 in 2 weeks. And she has created multiple products under her line of curly haired products. And she says to me that the most fascinating thing for her is how we are able to help her take something that she dreams up in her bedroom or doodles in her journal and turns it into a real thing. And this time I'm not going to be caught on my heels, Jody, because now I brought stuff with me to share. So I'm just going to tell you her first doodle, well, actually her second doodle, was a coloring book for curly haired girls. Now, if you've heard my story and my daughter's story, she has suffered for all her life with big, giant, curly, tangly hair. And we would spend long, long hours in the salon and lots of money. I'm talking about 11-hour stints in the salon multiple times. And she just wanted to put the fun back into curly hair. So she began not necessarily designing, because she wasn't designing at the time. She was simply dreaming up, imagining products. One of them was a curly girl coloring book. And this is it. It's a real coloring book, as you can see, right? It has designs in it, right? And there's my daughter right there with her big curly hair. And one of the things that was so fascinating to her and still remains to be quite a fascination for her is how an idea makes it to the marketplace. Now, I don't have to tell you that that skill is incredibly valuable for any child to grow up knowing from a very young age, that whatever you imagine can actually become a reality, and you can actually find a community of people that are not only waiting for something like that, predisposed to buying it right out of the gate, and you're able to create a connection with individuals, like-minded individuals, like in my daughter's case, other curly-haired girls, and that skill of being able to imagine, create, put into a market, and have that machine continue to grow even when you've long past the idea or when you've lost interest, like a lot of our parents say. When my kid loses interest way too frequently, he's supposed to. She's supposed to. She's just a kid. And you want them losing interest and moving on and exploring something more or bigger or deeper, right? It's our job as CEO to say, you know what, there's value in that. There's a market waiting for that thing that you've created out of sheer genius. And it's my job to figure out how to get it into the market, how to make it profitable. And most importantly, something I haven't touched on yet, is to turn it into something that will serve you, my child, when you are an adult, right? Because creating at 5, 6, 8, and 10 is something very difficult, or sorry, different than when you're creating at 20 and 30 and 40, right? And you know I'm talking to you. All of us have trouble creating from multiple things, right? Fear of rejection, will it sell? We ask all of these questions before we even put our foot in the door, and it locks us, right? It's a creative block. Children don't have this, right? Children don't ask themselves these questions. They have a need, they create it. Just take a look at the blanket forts in your living room or the contraptions that they make out in the yard for when they're playing, right? So it really is invaluable for us as parents to, number one, be listening, always be listening. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a product, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a business, so to speak. It could be a cause. It could be a need in their community, something they see on television in the world around them. If you travel a lot, it's excellent exposure for them to see different types of cultures, lifestyles, needs, and teaching them how to observe the world around them and find something that, number one, they care about, they might have a stake in, and that they could probably lend their genius or their own light and clarity into. So I'm not necessarily talking only to little entrepreneurs. We're also talking to change makers and leaders as well. Now, what I also want to share with you is, remember that I said you are the CEO. And I really mean that. The child is not the boss. And it's really cute to say kid boss and boss baby and all of those fun things. And I do that as well. But at the core of it, they're really not the CEO, right? There are no 5-year-old fashion designers. It is you that is the leader of the organization or the business. They are the creative director, the artistic director, right? And their time and space must be protected. That protection is called childhood, right? So, what we want to make sure is that your child is free to play, to change their mind, to create, right? To give feedback. You don't want to hassle them or burden them with the headaches or the intricacies of business, right? Being online and e-commerce and PR and all of that good stuff. You want them to be able to preserve their youthful genius, their creativity, and allow them to just churn out what they do naturally as a child. And that's their ideas, their artwork, their innovations, their playthings, right? And it is up to us to take on the role and say, you know what, this is of value. I'm sure there's a community out there in need of it. How can we make it work? Now, here's the pitfall I want you to avoid. I've created the Family Business Planner, and it's a little twist on a business plan, but it's a little on the emotional and kind of spiritual side, because that's a piece of the puzzle that we never talk about in business, right? And what I want you to take really good care of is the family unit that is charged with supporting your child, right? So if it's mom or dad, mom, grandma, whatever the case is, whoever the adults are in your family that are charged with caring for and kind of promoting your child's business or brand. It's so important to give your child the skills needed for a lifelong of success. What I want to discourage you in doing is leaving someone out in the family who perhaps might not necessarily agree with the direction that you're going in or that your child is going in, right? You don't want to work around them. Like, we just won't tell dad how much we spent, or we just won't tell mom that we're going to go there that next weekend. That's dangerous ice that we're treading on, and we don't want to teach our kids that, right? I even remember those stories as a young kid, and I've shared this with my friend Jody before. You know, I remember mom going on these shopping sprees, and then we would leave everything in the car until dad went to sleep, and then we would come prancing in all these bags of overpriced merchandise. And sure, when you're 12, it's fun, but you realize now it really is not the best way to go about things. So when you're planning this road and you're taking this journey with your child to develop a brand or a following, whatever the case is, whether they're an athlete or a model or an actor or an actually entrepreneur, you want to consider everyone in the family. You want to sit down and ask the questions. What does going down this journey mean for our family? Will we be able to survive, number one, the expenses or the taxing on our schedule, right? If we have to go every Sunday to the farmer's market to sell homemade honey, are we okay with that? Are we as a family going to survive this journey, right? Are we prepared? What resources or what responsibilities will I have to take on alongside of what I already have to do as a mom or a dad or brother and sister, and make sure that everybody's got a clear picture of what's expected of themselves and what's expected of the child or children that are actually going to be kind of front and center of doing this brand. And you'll find, you can find my family planner at bit.ly Fam Planner 2020. And it's a free planner, and I'm so in love with it, if I say so myself, because it really does start a valuable dialogue between the parents that allows you to take inventory of your own ability to take this on, of your partner's ability and of wanting to take it on, and of course your child gives input as well. So that it's kind of a North Star, it's a compass, if you will, that as you go down this road, you can check back on one another, because we all have the right to change our mind, right? If we say, yeah, this is amazing, let's go for it now, and it turns out to be something totally different, we have the right to change our mind. And most importantly, you have to allow your child to change their mind. You have to allow them to say, you know what, mom and dad, I'm out. I don't like this. It's not fun. Too much pressure, right? Infighting in the family. I don't like how it makes me feel at school. You have to allow them the ability to feel that and to express it and to be honored by it. Now, with that being said, it does not necessarily mean, and each family is different, you'll have to explore this for your family. It doesn't necessarily mean that we close up all shop and we never talk about this thing again, right? It could mean that your child is free to go play soccer, go do whatever it is that they want to do in that season of their life. But mom and dad may decide, you know what, there still is value here. The community still needs this message or this thing, whatever it is. And you might decide, we're going to go ahead and continue to run this as a bona fide sustainable business or brand and insulate our child from that world, the business world, right? Allow them to continue to be a child. But you have to also be just as aware when your child says to you, this is no fun, I don't want to do this, right? Even if it doesn't come out of their mouth, you have to be in tune with what they're feeling, what they're showing, because the last thing that you want out of all of this is a child that is that feels left out or resents their parents. You never, ever want to be in that space, because it will leave an indelible mark on that child that they may never want to go back to this space of entrepreneurial or creativity again. And that's the most dangerous part of this. We want this experience to be supportive, uplifting, joyful. We want them to be able to birth the things that are coming into their imagination, out of their little pens and hands. And we want them to see the beauty that they can create from their imagination into the world, even if things like this never make it to the market, even if it just sits on their bedroom dresser or they get to share it with their best friend at school. You know, the memory and the experience is something that they will never forget. But unfortunately, if we make our children feel pressured or less than or different than other kids because you're an entrepreneur, you have a brand, or you have 1 million likes and that makes you different, please be careful and please proceed with caution, because you may make them resent the whole process. You know, I have a colleague of mine who teaches young children how to take their message onto the stage. And she remembers being a speaker at a very young age because her mother was a high-powered real estate agent that was sought after, and she did many, many trainings on stage. So anytime her daughter, my colleague, was on stage, her mother would always be in the back of the room going, smile, smile, and pressuring her. And if you're a dance mom, a pageant mom, an athlete mom, you can relate to this. And it bothered her so much that even now, as a trainer for speakers, she tells parents the opposite. Don't do those things, because I never wanted to take the stage. I was embarrassed by everyone looking at my mother, who was trying to coach me from the audience. And it really left a really bad taste in her mouth. To now it has affected her work in a good way, because she's teaching parents and kids how to become a speaker in a very healthy and natural way. But I'm sure you have a similar story where, you know, you're on the baseball field or the volleyball court, and, you know, you've got that doting parent that's either telling you all kinds of things or, you know, shouting from the stands, and it just leaves a bad feeling, and you never want to have that. So when building a kid brand, a kid business, or a kid cause, you want to make sure that the passion is coming from your child, that it's still playful and joyful, and that you and your spouse or your partner feel the same way and exude the same energy that your child is. Because if you begin to take this too seriously, if the media begins calling and you're suddenly on the Ellen show or, you know, in the nightly news, and you begin to take on the pressures of what that means, and you relay that to your child, those are red flags, right? When you start to feel that anxiety, or you want to pressure your child to perform or to be on, right? Or to accept something that they're not quite excited about, those are the red flags that you're treading on dangerous territory. So if you feel that way, I want you to call me, right? Or because we'll put you back in check and we'll tell you that your kid is the genius, Your kid is the artistic director. They've got it all figured out. Believe me, they have no fear. They have no judgment. They don't care about what makes money and what doesn't. They don't care who's going to accept them and who doesn't. They're just going to create beautiful things if you let them, right? So we will tell you he or she is already perfect. And if you want to kind of expand their reach, right? If they're already an ice skater or, you know, a champion in their area, and you want to expand that into something that's actually giving back to them, perhaps financially for the future, you want to make them the star of the show in a way that they feel joyful about what they're creating, right? And if it begins to feel too heavy for them, this is no different than the advice we give to our adult colleagues. If something begins to feel too heavy, you know it's not right or it's not time, right? So please be gentle with your kid entrepreneurs, but be supportive, because they definitely have a lot to give to this world if you are listening. So I want to thank you so much for this time. I just want to give a quick recap. You know, if you're raising a budding leader, and I hesitate to say entrepreneur because it really isn't about business, right? It's about anything. Like in my story with Brick Sticks, right? This was just a kid playing on the floor, nothing special, right? But any child can become a brand, can create from a space of genius. And I do want to correct something. You know, when I say brand, I don't necessarily mean, you know, a photo shoot or 1 million viewers on YouTube or a TikTok channel or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. A child needs a brand much in the way an adult needs a brand, right? And most of the children and most of the adults you know already have a brand. And that's simply what they are known for or what they want to be known for, right? So if you think about your child's classroom right now, surely you know who the class clown is, who the academic leaders are, who you know, the kind-hearted ones are, who the soft-hearted ones are. You know who those people are. And when your child understands his or her brand, what he or her are meant for, they can determine what they will stand for and what they won't stand for. Does that make sense? They will gravitate to the people that mesh with their brand, who they are, and they will repel folks that don't necessarily mesh with what they stand for, what they want to do in their lives, right? So if you have a serious child, they're probably not going to be hanging around with a bunch of pranksters. That's probably going to annoy them, right? And maybe possibly even get them into some trouble. So they will know they have an inner compass inside that's already got the brand in it, right? So helping your child develop what that brand is. Again, this is not colors and logos and photos, right? This is who they are, what they stand for. Then that will help them in years to come to understand and know, I'm going to excel in this group of people or in this area or these topics. And I'm probably not the right fit for this group over here or these circle of topics, right? So something that my daughter has said to me in the past when she comes home reporting things that people have said to her that have hurt her or been negative, it hurts her especially when someone that she really trusts says something negative or kind of nonchalant that she takes negatively. And ironically, there will be other students that say similar things, but then I'll say to her, did that bother you? Does that hurt you? And she'll say to me, no, because I didn't expect anything more from that person. And that is the description of a brand. When your child, remember my girl is 9, when your child can tell you, I know what that person stands for, and I know what this person stands for, and that's why it kind of set me back or it shocked me, Mom, and I know what I stand for. I'm not going to go over there and do that, but I'm definitely game to do this, right? So allowing them the opportunity to dialogue with you and develop a brand from the most organic space, and that's from within, is the best place to be. It's not who they want to be, what they want to be, which is where adults get hung up. It's who they are and how they were made, and everything grows from there. So I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank all of you listening and watching. I hope that this has been helpful for you as you raise your little leader. And if there's anything that we can do to take the conversation further, please feel free to contact me at the links below.